is that we have a whole conversation and I don't record it.
That's right.
Wow. All right. Well, we might as well just start right over again.
There we go.
I mean, I have whatever we had from before, I think, but in case we don't. Christy, welcome to Fine is a 4-letter word.
Hi, Lori.
Let me just tell you that Christy and I have been having technical difficulties trying to get this interview recorded. And we're laughing because we have just spent the past, I don't even know how many minutes trying to make this work. But I am still eager to have Christy share her knowledge and information and her story. So we're going to start over again. Christy, tell me. Well, first of all, Christy and I were introduced by a previous guest, Deb Coviello, who is on a previous episode. I can't remember which number it is, 17, I think. But go back and look for Deb Coviello's interview. Deb introduced Christy and me, and here we are.
Here we are.
Fighting with technology.
I hope you didn't have technical problems with her. I'll just say it's me.
We didn't. And no, I don't think it's you. I think it's just this day, perhaps.
Okay. We're gonna push through and get it done though.
We are. So thank you so much for your patience and for joining me here today. And let's start out with the question that I always ask my guests, because I'm just so curious about what your background is and where you come from, and what were the values that were instilled in you as a child that contributed to who you've become as an adult?
That's such a great question. So my early life was shaped by a tragedy that actually happened in our family. So my grandfather was 22 years old. He served in the Navy during World War II, newly married. He had a 6-month-old baby, which was my mom, and he came back to our hometown and worked in the steel mill. And he would bring the trains with the raw materials in to the steel facility. And one day it was raining and he jumped up on the train to grab hold of the side. He slipped and his leg went under the train and it cut it off at the knee. And a tragic accident. And yet 6 weeks later, he went back to work with a prosthetic leg. And I think that really shaped my mom's childhood, and it shaped, I know, my childhood. And so some of the values from that lesson, was courage, obviously, but perseverance, pushing through, hard work, don't give up, and find a way. And I really, when I think about that, it really did shape my childhood and who I am today as an individual.
Those are all super strong and what somebody would consider positive qualities. But did they ever take on a negative, a pressure?
Yeah. I mean, a life of their own, right? I like to say that anything maximized can become a liability. And I really, as I think about that, right, well, first of all, trying to measure up, like if you have a family member that's gone through a tragedy like that and overcome these unsurmountable odds and is basically living this life, you feel like anything that you are in your life that's not going your way is just minuscule, right? So I think that there's another side of it where, always find a way, don't give up. But there are times where you have to give up, right? There are times where you push through and you're exhausted and you're tired, and for your own self-care and self-sanity, that it's time to walk away from it. And growing up, I learned to put on the mask and to be stoic and to show up, right? Whether you feel like it or not, you fake it till you make it. And I think that there's a really dark side to that.
Yeah, because then you're putting pressure on yourself. First of all, you're not necessarily taking care of yourself when you need to. You're putting pressure on yourself to accomplish.
Right.
When maybe, like you said, maybe you do need to step back. I know, as entrepreneurs, we're always told never, ever, ever, ever give up.
That's right.
And sometimes you're beating your head against the wall and you need to turn around and look and see if there's something else that you could do differently.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a simple pivot, and maybe it's like in my case, when I was running my baking company, shut the whole thing down because this is not serving you.
Yeah. Well, and there's that other side of it. Like you can continue pushing yourself until you look back and you're like, am I happy doing this? Like, I think that's
Mhm.
ultimately the question, right? Like, I
Right.
think all of us have it within us to be great and do extraordinary things, but are we happy doing those things? And that's the question to be answered. If we're not, if we get to a point, which I love the name of the podcast, right? Fine. If we're just at a point where we're fine and we're not living life to its fullest or its greatest potential, it's time to make some changes.
Yeah. So has there been a situation where you used those qualities and
Yeah.
you found yourself in a situation where everything was fine and you went along for however long it was? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I have to say, from the time I was young, I was sort of groomed. I'm an only child, and I was sort of groomed that this path, um, this planned future had been laid out before me. I call it an arranged career, and that
Mm.
was I was going to go to college. I was the first generation on both sides of my family to go to college. I was going to land this amazing corporate job, and then life would just unfold in this blissful way. And I followed the plan entirely the way it was supposed to be. I landed a great corporate job. 11 years later, I was in the corporate office, doing my dream job, but completely burned out, strung out, overwhelmed. And I did not have a life. I mean, I was miserable. And I was standing in Kansas City, actually doing a leadership development program. And I had asked the participants when they introduced themselves to tell me something fun they did in their life besides work. And as
Mhm.
36 people introduced themselves, I realized I did not have anything outside of work. And I was newly married. And it was just sort of this epiphany that came over me like, how did I let this happen? And I went back and I had a conversation with my boss and I said, I can't keep this pace up. I need some life balance. And he said to me, Christy, there is no no. And meaning, this is the job, this is what you signed up for, this is what it is. And I went home and I said to my husband, I need to find the no.
Mhm.
And he was like, well, why don't you start your own company? And do people do that? I hadn't been raised in an entrepreneurial family. I'm like, is that allowed? Am I
Is
smart
that
enough? Am I good
allowed?
enough? And so the flip side of it is, I was smart enough to do it and I could do it, but it was giving up the dream that my family had for me,
Mhm.
right? Which on the outside, anybody who saw my life would have said, my gosh, you have an amazing life,
Yeah.
right? You have this great job, you're traveling all the time, you live in a beautiful home, you're newly married. And yet I was so unfulfilled. And I put the steps in place. I worked with a coach, and really it wasn't about the expertise. I wasn't questioning the expertise. I was questioning walking away and feeling the guilt and shame from walking away from a good life to start something even better. But people didn't see that.
What was it like when you had to tell your parents?
Yeah,
Because did you feel like you were disappointing them?
yes, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I can say that my friends and my family, those who I thought would be most supportive because they knew me, were
Mhm.
actually not supportive. They said, "Are you crazy? You're giving up the security of corporate America. You have a great job. You're going to be the one to break through the glass ceiling. Why are you doing this?" Like they thought I was crazy. And every single time they say, "What are you going to do if you fail?" And
Mm.
I said, I'll go get another job, right? I mean, I knew I could go get another job. That's what I had already done. But at that moment, I wanted some balance in my life. I just wanted to regroup and take a pause. And I said, hey, if this entrepreneur thing doesn't work out, I'll be happy to go get another job. And that was 20 years ago. So it's amazing that I thought the people around me would be the most supportive, and they actually weren't.
Yeah, that's interesting because that happens to a lot of people. You would think that the people who are closest to you would be the most supportive, but they're not because you are threatening their way of
Yep.
being.
Yeah. Well,
You're
and honestly, I had everything that they had ever wanted, right?
Mhm.
So I had a life that most of my family had never even dreamed of, even at 31, 32 years old. And why would I throw that away? Why would I start all over? Why would I follow the unknown and want to
Mhm.
chart my own course? And I think when they say those things, now that I work with entrepreneurs, when they say those things, it's really about them, not
Right.
about you, right? I can look
Exactly.
back on it now. I didn't know that at the time, but it was really about all their fears and insecurities and doubts about doing it, not about me doing it.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is also why it's so important to have friends and talk to your friends, but also why they are not necessarily the best people to help you get to that next level of where you want to go, and why coaches are so important, because one, they're what's the word I'm looking for? They're objective.
Right. And neutral, totally neutral.
That's the word. Yeah.
Yep.
And your friends, again, your friends are threatened because they have their own fears, and you doing those things, whether it's in taking a career step like that or changing your life in a personal way,
Right.
makes them examine what they're doing and how they're living. And that is scary for them.
It's very scary. And I like to say the people that are in our inner circle, they only know the person that we are today, and they can see the history, right? They can see the behind, but they many times can't see the future. And we need to surround ourselves when we're in those huge transitions. We need to surround ourselves with people that actually see where we're going, not where we came from.
Right. And where you could go, the possibilities.
The possibilities of it all.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you went around that room and asked people that question, and you weren't having any fun. So another thing that I hear from a lot of people is, I don't even know what fun is anymore. I've said it myself.
Yeah, I have too.
What did you do to discover that? Because obviously going out on your own and becoming an entrepreneur was the thing that you came up with, but that's still business. That's still career.
Still business.
Did you also find fun things to do?
Absolutely. So, when I sat down and looked at my life holistically after that day, I looked at what was missing that I envisioned in my perfect life, right? And what was missing was I was not a part of the community that I lived in. I wasn't even part of the neighborhood that I lived in. So my husband and I had lived there 4 years. We had moved to Columbus, Ohio for this job, for me to take this job. And immediately I hit the ground running. And I can look back and see where some of the chaos I created myself. So I was doing a career transition. I was going from sales into sales training and development. And I wanted to prove myself. I was hell bent on becoming the expert. So I had 30 certifications, and I did the trips, and anything that they needed somebody to do, I wanted to do it because I wanted to prove that I should be there. And that actually ended up working against me, right? I then became this highly qualified, trained person that everybody wanted. And that's how I ended up saying yes to all of these things. So I was my own worst enemy. But I sat down and I looked at, okay, what were the things in my life that were most important that I envisioned being in that perfect life that were no longer there? And so a sense of community, being a part of my neighborhood. My husband was married, but living a single life because I was traveling Monday through Friday. I wanted to know my neighbors. I wanted to belong to a church. I wanted to volunteer in the community. Like all of those pieces were very important to me. And so from that, once I had that clear picture, I was like, okay, then how do I design this next step to have those pieces in it rather than to defaulting to the crazy that I've just come out of? And I think many times we do default, right? We've lived in this dysfunctional system, and then we come out and we start our own businesses, but we redesign what we just left.
Because that's all we know.
That's all we know, right? Instead of redesigning what we truly want on our own terms.
Yes. And being intentional about it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right. Yes. So you sat down and said, all right, this is what I visualize.
Yep. And then I created a plan. So I spent about 6 months really putting that plan together. Financially, part of my business plan was financially, we did not have kids. We paid all of the bills off except for our house. So we were in a good financial place. We set some very low goals. Like I needed to make $10,000, in the last quarter of the year. I actually left and started my business in October. And so it was like minimal goals, but still goals that I had to work, right?
Yep.
So the whole goal in the beginning was to create this balance. And I have to say, it was so scary the first day that I was out of the corporate job and I was home, because that's reality, right? Everybody I know is working. I have now, just because I hung a shingle out and I said, this is my new job, doesn't mean that I actually believed that. In fact, I tell this story all the time. of how every quarter I would send a tax return in, because as business owners, we do quarterly taxes, and I would sign my signature and then it says title and I would put president. And for years, every quarter, I was afraid the IRS was going to call and say, what? You're really not a president of a company, right? So it takes a while to like step into that skin of that new role, whatever that new role is. I think about when I had kids, stepping into that mother role, stepping into that wife role, stepping into a partner role or a business owner. Like it's a transition. It's not just overnight. And I've always used this phrase. It's in a book called Managing Transitions. And he says, transitions begin with endings and end with new beginnings. And in the middle is all the emotion that we don't stop to realize is going to happen. And I've always remembered that.
Yes. So how do you address that emotion? Because again, people are conditioned to not feel. I've had conversations with so many of my guests and clients and just people I talk to who have actually grown up not been the value instilled in them was we don't have emotions or we don't express them. We stuff them down. And like you were talking about, we just keep going on. You didn't say that was part of your family, but the, nose to the grindstone, we don't do feelings.
That's exactly right. Yeah. My family wasn't total opposite of that, but we did, we did push through. And I would like to say that today I am much healthier in the way that I handle those emotions and transitions than I was in my early 30s when I started my business. But one of the things is there's tremendous power with sitting in the discomfort. And we try to fill the discomfort. I actually call it buffering. And buffering, I think of it as the spinning wheel of death on a computer, right? When it's trying to get to a page and it's just buffering. And it's action, but it's not good action. And so when we feel uncomfortable, we reach for things that make us feel better in the moment, right? We shop online, we drink, we zone out on Facebook, we veg out in front of the TV on Netflix for 4 hours, and it makes us feel good in the moment. But overall, it's not fixing the problem. And I say, have a glass of wine, do whatever it is you want to do, but don't get caught in the endless loop to where you're living there and not moving forward. So now I recognize it, I don't eat the whole bag of M&Ms when I'm feeling the discomfort. I find healthier options. Maybe it's just a handful of M&Ms versus the whole bag, but it's recognizing that. And I think, many times with age comes wisdom. And that I've learned all of those skills and coping mechanisms through the years. Yeah.
Do you use any tools now, like journaling or meditation, or how do you keep yourself grounded and focused now?
Yeah, I do both actually. So I start my morning off with journaling, and then I do meditation a couple of times throughout the day. And it's becoming very centered and present as to how I'm feeling at that moment. And just understanding, one of the things I've taught emotional intelligence for years, and I've tried to teach both of my young children that emotions are not good or bad. They just are, right? And they're all there to serve a purpose. Fear is there to protect us. We want to feel fear. Anger is there to protect us. All of the emotions are there for a reason, and we have to allow each of them to surface and then understand where they're coming from. What thoughts are creating those emotions that I'm feeling? And do I want to allow them to control me, or do I want to change the story about them? And how long am I going to let myself sit and stew and wallow in the self-pity and then pull myself out of it and go forward?
Right. I just saw something recently too about emotions. So you said emotions serving a purpose, emotions as an indicator.
Yeah, it's our warning signal, right?
Right.
Actually, emotions start firing off the limbic system in our reptilian brain, and they're actually warning systems. That's why we feel them. Like our body goes through a natural change whenever those feelings come up, and if we are scared and self-protection, like all of the body emotions, like the reptilian brain and the respiratory, all go into protecting us. So they are there. Now we have, as human beings, and evolved human beings, we have to decide, right? Am I really in fear and need protection, or is it a false fear that's coming up. And we have to recognize that, right? It's no longer I'm running from the saber-toothed tiger, but I could be stressed and overwhelmed, giving off the same indicators.
Right. And is this fear, I'm physically in
Right.
harm's way, or it's just something I don't feel comfortable
That's right.
doing?
Is it
And in which
emotionally
case,
uncomfortable?
yeah. And in which case, oftentimes feeling that fear means you have to move forward towards the thing. Like that's the indicator is
Absolutely.
that's the thing you need to do because that's where your growth is.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I work with clients, I actually take them through a whole, we call it the thought download model, and they become very in tune to their thoughts and their feelings, because your thoughts direct your feelings direct your actions direct your results.
Yes.
And when they feel those warning signals go off, those firing emotions, to pause and think about where they're coming from, because they will always give you indicators, right? It will always be
Right.
clues. Why do I feel uncomfortable here? Why am I feeling afraid? Why am I feeling angry? And it really is the whole premise, is to become so self-aware that you're not going to mitigate completely the emotion being fired off, but you can mitigate how long you stay in that emotion.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And recognize whether that's truly your own emotion or
Mhm.
is that coming from someplace else that it
Yep.
was passed down to you.
Absolutely. Peeling back the onion. And is this something that I picked up because of my childhood, or is this something that's truly I want to hang on to? And I've had several times like that. Like, one of my biggest fears is being embarrassed, like literally looking like an idiot in front of a group
Mhm.
of people and not looking smart and embarrassing myself. And so there were times earlier on in my career when I was younger that if someone would question something that I had done or said, right, those warning signals would fire off. Oh my gosh, I'm looking stupid right now. And it has nothing to do with that. It's just they were asking for clarification.
Right.
Yeah.
I could completely relate to that. Yeah. Why are you questioning me?
Right.
Question me.
Yep.
And I've
Maturity.
had the opposite happen. I remember at one of my very first jobs, I was asking a lot of questions. I tend to ask it, which is why I love doing my podcast, because I get to ask questions, but because I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
And this woman who was my new boss would take offense because she thought I was questioning her authority or her abilities,
Intelligence. Yeah.
but her intelligence. But I genuinely just wanted to know because I was new. I didn't know anything. I wanted to know everything.
Yeah. And those were all about her,
Yeah.
right? Not about you.
Right.
Not at all. And through the years, I have learned that I cannot control other people's thoughts, what they think about me, what they feel about me. That's all on them. So I have to do me and let them do them.
Yes, exactly. You mentioned your children are, I'm wondering, I don't have children, but I wonder about this a lot of instilling, when we talk about instilling values and then not worrying so much about what other people think of you and downloading that to a child's brain.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I would love to say that the work that I've done for the last 20 years has made me a better parent. And I waited later in life to become a parent. But yeah, really, they can do them and you can do you, not to get so hung up. I see it now. I have a teenager and I just see if there's this period where you want to fit in. I remember that period where
Right.
you don't want to stand out. You want to blend. You want the shoes and the backpack and everything to look like everybody else's. And yet, I'm standing over here on the sideline saying, "Oh my gosh, please stand out. I want you to stand out." And she's like, "I'll stand out when the time is right." So it really is the more confidence, girls'
Yes.
confidence plummets by around age 10. It's at its highest point, like age 10, and then it starts declining. And I really hope that we are changing that for the girls who are following us in our footsteps right now, because I think it's a tragedy that I watch it. I was
Yeah.
actually a chaperone on both of my girls' camp trips that they do with school in 5th grade. And I saw the boys volunteer first and try new things and fail quicker. And the girls would sort of hold back and just wait. And I asked the teachers, I said, "Is this indicative of 5th grade?" And she said, yes. They all agreed, yes, it is. And I want my kids to fail early. I want them not to be afraid of failure. not to be afraid of embarrassing themselves, because failure means you're trying it. And the next time
Yeah.
and the next time, it's going to get easier.
Yeah, I think it was Sarah Blakely. I heard her
Mhm.
speak. She's the founder of Spanx, for people who don't know who she is, but that at her dinner table when she was growing up, her dad would always ask, "What did you fail at today?"
I
I
love that
think it was
question.
her family, but somewhere, somebody, yeah, that was
I'm
the
going to
question that was
incorporate that.
asked.
I like that. Well, because we are so conditioned not to fail, right?
Mhm.
It's just it's like a sword through our heart to fail, to even think about the pride and the ego. And yet life is about failure. You
Right.
try, if we think about all the greats, the great inventors, Thomas Edison, he
Yeah.
failed more than he succeeded. How many times did he have to fail in order to make it work? And I think that we tend to forget that. Even in business, I see new business owners, they want to make a video and have it go viral. They want to write one email and have it sell millions. And it just doesn't work that way. It's
Right.
it's failure every single day, picking yourself back up and doing it again.
It's really too about redefining what that word even
Yeah,
means,
right.
because it doesn't define you. First of
Mm-mm.
all, failure doesn't define you, but also it just means you didn't get the outcome you were expecting.
Right. And there's next time, right?
And then
I
you
I
go on.
actually,
Yeah.
when I left corporate, I actually worked with a coach, and that was her question. How would you define failure in this next venture? What does failure look like? And I had reached a point where I said, failure is not trying.
Mm.
So anything else. And then she said, okay, what would failure really look like though in your business? And I said, that I couldn't get one client. Like that would be what failure looked like. And she said, do you think that that's possible? And I said, absolutely not. I mean, somebody would buy from me. I just knew that it wasn't possible, that I
Hmm.
had spent 11 years selling and that I could not get one person to buy something from me. So at
Hmm.
that point, as soon as I said that, what it meant to me, what it looked like, it totally diffused it. And I was like, I can't fail,
Yeah.
right? By my own standards, I cannot fail.
Right. And we hear that question a lot of times, like, what would you do if you knew you wouldn't fail?
Right,
If you knew failure wasn't possible?
right.
But taking the step back of what does failure even mean? And
Hmm.
so then answering that question, like that just opens up so much possibility.
Right.
And that comes back to the whole, like brings the conversation kind of full circle of doing what you love, finding the thing that is fun
Right.
for you.
Yeah. I had someone early on in my career tell me, find something that you love doing so much that you would do it for free, but that you're so good at that people want to pay you to do it.
Mm.
And that has always stuck with me because it is about having fun and working with clients that bring out the best in you and you bring out the best in them. And everybody has a group of people that they're meant to serve. And when I watch new business owners say, oh, I can sell everybody, I'm like, you really don't want to. We've
Mm-mm.
all worked with the difficult customer, the customer that we dreaded, at the end of the project working with, and we're like, we will never work with them again.
Yeah.
So it is about enjoying what you do, doing what you love, what you're good at, not focusing on what you're not good at, but focusing on what you are good at, and finding those other people that complement you in those areas that you may not have a skill set or a strength. And then you're both working in your zone of genius.
Right. Building your team
Yep,
of people that you work with and building your tribe of your ideal clients.
absolutely. That's the name of the game.
That is. Before we wrap this up, tell me what song you listen to when you need to get into that happy mood, when you need that extra boost of energy and, the song that you can't sit still to.
Yep. So the song is I've Got a Feeling by Black Eyed Peas.
Oh,
And I
yes.
crank it and blast it, and it works every single time.
Good song. Good song. Yeah. I can see you in your car right now. Windows are rolled up,
That's
but
right.
but you're
Blasting
dancing.
it. That's exactly it. My kids know that that's the song. If we're having a bad day in the house, that is the song that is cranked up full force. And it's amazing how it will just turn it around, right?
Yeah.
Because you cannot sit still.
I
listening to
love
it.
that music has the ability to do that.
I know it really is. Music has the ability to inspire us, to create emotion within us. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. So if people want to continue a conversation with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, best way is LinkedIn. So I'm always hanging out there. And, I do work with clients. I do a small group programs. I am passionate about helping business owners, small business owners, solopreneurs make money and get out of their way, get out of their head. And I work in small cohorts where it is low content, high action, high accountability to make their financial dreams and their business everything that they want it to be.
Okay. So find you on LinkedIn.
Yep. Christy
Okay.
Metcalf. Yeah. Find me on LinkedIn. My website, CEO Learning Systems. I've got that going on right now. And yeah, reach out. Let's have a conversation about what the struggles and the pain points are. I have 25 years in business, working with Fortune 500s all the way down to nonprofits and solopreneurs. There's probably not a question I can't answer or find somebody who can answer it for me.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining. We will put links to all of that
Okay.
in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining us today on Fine is a 4-letter word.
Thanks, Lori.
All right.